She stole another woman's son to save her marriage, but 20 years later, one blood test exposed everything. And what happened next broke two families apart. In the peaceful village of Umuada, two families lived very different lives. Mr. and Mrs. Chukuma were not wealthy, but their home was filled with love. They had three children: Obinna, their first son; Kelechi, their second son; and little Adeze, their youngest and only daughter. They had no luxury, but their mother often reminded them, a family with love is richer than a palace without peace. Far from them lived Chief Nnamdi Okafo, one of the richest men in the community. He had businesses, vast farmland, cars, and beautiful houses. But there was one thing his wealth could not buy: a child. His wife, Chinwe, had suffered several miscarriages. One evening, before leaving for an important business trip, Chief Nandi held his wife's hands. "Chinwe, I love you, but when I return, I want to hear that you are pregnant. I need an heir. If you cannot give me a son, our marriage may not survive." Chinwe's heart shattered. She cried throughout the night, but desperation slowly replaced reason. And then she made a terrible decision. One afternoon, when Chinwe saw little Kelechi playing outside his family's compound, he was only 7 years old. She smiled and opened the packet of biscuits. "Kelechi, come and take some biscuits," she called. The innocent boy ran towards her. "Thank you, Auntie." She led him away from there, and he never returned home. When Mrs. Chukuma realized that her son was missing, she screamed his name until her voice became weak. The family searched everywhere: the markets, the farms, the streams, neighboring villages, but Kelechi had disappeared. Years passed. Hope slowly turned into heartbreak. Every night, Mrs. Chukuma still kept her son's little shirt beside her pillow. She would hold it against her chest and whisper, "My son, wherever you are, your mother has not forgotten you." Chinwe returned home with Kelechi and told her husband that the boy was his. Chief Nandi was overwhelmed with joy. He had traveled for a long time and came back to see his son. He lifted the boy into his arms. "My son." From that moment, Kelechi lived like a prince. The chief gave him the best education, the finest clothes, the best opportunities, and most importantly, his love. Years later, Chinwe gave birth to two daughters, Amaka and Chiamaka. The family appeared perfect, but Chinwe had a secret that became more dangerous with every passing year. Chief Nandi loved Kelechi deeply. He proudly introduced him as his first son. Eventually, he made Kelechi his next of kin. Chinwe was furious. "What about my daughters?" The chief looked at her. "Kelechi is my first son. He will carry on my name." From that day, Chinwe's heart became bitter. She began treating Kelechi coldly, but the young man never understood why. He still called her mommy. And every time he did, Chinwe felt the weight of her terrible secret. 20 years have passed. Kelechi became a kind and responsible young man despite all the ill treatment of Chinwe. Then, one morning, Chief Nandi suddenly collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital. The doctors discovered that he desperately needed blood. Kelechi immediately stepped forward. "Take mine, please, save my father." But after the tests were done, the doctors discovered something shocking. Kelechi was not Chief's biological son. Chinwe nearly collapsed. Her secret was finally coming out, but fate had prepared an even greater shock. In another ward of the same hospital was an elderly woman who had been brought in seriously ill. It was Mrs. Chukwuma. And beside her was the same little shed she had kept for 20 years. A nurse noticed the shed. Something about it seemed familiar. Questions were asked. Old records were searched. Blood samples were compared. Then the results arrived. Kelechi was Mrs. Chukwuma's biological son. The boy who had disappeared 20 years earlier had finally been found. When Kelechi entered the room, Mrs. Chukwuma stared at him. Her hands began to tremble. "My son." Kelechi froze. "Who are you?" She held out the tiny shirt. "This belonged to you." He touched it. Suddenly, childhood memories came rushing back. His mother's voice, his father's laughter. A little girl called his name. His old home, his eyes filled with tears. Then he whispered, "Mommy?" Mrs. Chukwuma screamed, "My son." They fell into each other's arms. For 20 years, she had prayed for that moment. And now, the child she thought she had lost forever was standing before her. When Chief Nandi heard the truth, his heart broke. He looked at Kelechi with tears in his eyes. "So you were never my blood?" Kelechi held his hand. "But you were my father." The chief began to cry like a baby. "I loved you as my own, and I loved you as my father," Kelechi replied. For a moment, there was silence. Then the chief whispered, "I wish I had more time." He tried to change his will and leave his wealth to his biological daughters, but fate gave him no chance. Before the new will could be completed, Chief Nandi died. His original will remained, and everything went to Kelechi. His businesses, his houses, his farms, his entire fortune. Chinwe was devastated. The woman who had stolen another woman's son to protect her marriage had eventually lost the very world she was trying to protect. One evening, she went to Kelechi. She fell to her knees. "Please forgive me." Kelechi stared at her through tears. "You took me from my mother." "I know," she replied. "You made her suffer for 20 years." "I know," she replied again. "You lied to the man who loved me." Chinwe broke down. "I was desperate. I was afraid of losing everything." Kelechi was silent. Then he helped her to her feet. "I cannot erase what you did." Chinwe lowered her head. "But I will not allow your wickedness to make me wicked too." He forgave her, not because what she did was right, but because she refused to carry hatred in his heart. Then Kelechi returned to his real family. His mother was waiting at the door, now healed. She opened her arms. "My son." Kelechi ran into them. She held him tightly, and this time she refused to let him go. The moral of this story is that Chinwe stole a child to build the family she wanted. But 20 years later, the truth returned. The child told the mother, who never stopped waiting, "Never destroy another person's happiness to build your own. What is built on a lie may stand for years, but truth will always find its way home." How many children are out there facing this type of fate? Place your comment in the section below, and thank you for watching. Remain blessed.